Kia ora. In this video, you will learn about the respiratory system. The respiratory system is a series of organs responsible for taking in oxygen and expelling carbon dioxide. The respiratory system can be divided into two parts: the upper respiratory tract and the lower respiratory tract. The upper respiratory tract is comprised of the nasal cavity, pharynx, and larynx. The lower respiratory tract is comprised of the trachea, lungs, bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, and diaphragm. Let's take a closer look at the upper respiratory tract. The nasal cavity is a large air-filled space above and behind the nose in the middle of the face. This is where air enters the body. The pharynx is the part of the throat behind the mouth and the nasal cavity. The larynx, commonly called the voice box, is the passageway for air between the pharynx and the trachea. Now let's move on to the lower respiratory tract. The trachea is commonly called the windpipe. It is a cartilaginous tube that connects the larynx to the bronchi of the lungs, allowing for the passage of air. The lungs are a pair of spongy, air-filled organs located on either side of the chest. The bronchi are the airways that lead from the trachea into the lungs. The bronchioles are smaller branches of the bronchi. The alveoli exchange oxygen and carbon dioxide molecules to and from the bloodstream. These tiny balloon-shaped air sacs sit at the very end of the respiratory tree and are arranged in clusters throughout the lungs. And finally, the diaphragm is a thin skeletal muscle that sits at the base of the chest and separates the abdomen from the chest. It contracts and relaxes when you breathe. Now that we have an understanding of the parts of the respiratory system, we can answer the question: what is the respiratory system's job? The purpose of the respiratory system is to obtain oxygen from the external environment and supply it to our body cells. It also removes carbon dioxide from the body, which is produced by cellular respiration. The respiratory system does not work alone. In order to supply oxygen to cells, it works with the circulatory system. The circulatory system's job is to circulate blood and transport nutrients. Oxygen enters the lungs and is transported through the circulatory system to the body cells. After leaving the body cells, carbon dioxide is transported through the circulatory system to the lungs, where it is then exhaled out of the body. Since we now understand the job of the circulatory system, we can move on to learn: how does oxygen enter the lungs? And how does carbon dioxide exit? Oxygen enters and carbon dioxide exits through a process called breathing. Breathing is the result of a combined action of the diaphragm and intercostal muscles. Breathing can be broken into two parts: inhalation and exhalation. Inhalation is when air is drawn down the trachea, bronchi, and bronchioles into the alveoli. This is able to happen because the diaphragm contracts and the chest expands. Exhalation is when air leaves the alveoli through the bronchioles, bronchi, and trachea to outside the body. This is because the diaphragm relaxes and the chest contracts. Take a few seconds to breathe in and out. And see if you can notice your diaphragm contracting and relaxing. So we know how oxygen and carbon dioxide enter and exit our bodies. But how does the oxygen travel all the way to our cells? Oxygen and carbon dioxide are exchanged across semi-permeable membranes. Oxygen diffuses from the air in the alveoli of the lungs to the capillaries in the lungs. This is a photo of capillaries that I took under the microscope. Capillaries are blood vessels with thin walls that allow for the exchange of gases. The oxygen then travels from the capillaries to the cytoplasm of the body cells. Remember, the cytoplasm is the jelly-like substance in a cell. From the cytoplasm, the oxygen travels to its final destination, the mitochondria. Mitochondria are the powerhouse of the cell, where cellular respiration takes place. This process uses up oxygen, and one of the outputs is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide diffuses from the mitochondria into the cytoplasm of body cells. From there, it travels to the capillaries, where it is then transported to the alveoli. From the alveoli, the carbon dioxide diffuses into the air in the lungs and is exhaled out of the body. This cycle repeats continuously throughout the day and night, and we don't even have to think about it. Na mihi nui kia koe. You now know the anatomy and physiology of the respiratory system. Thanks for watching.